I just want to sort of maybe give a proposed framework. And this can be as interactive as you want it to be. If not, I have plenty of questions, and we can do all the work up here, and that's okay too. But we do want it to be interactive. I put a few note cards around for those of you who might feel more comfortable submitting written questions as opposed to raising your hands, which you can do at any time. If somebody is really kind of, I don't know, I also remain or kind of hold on to the veto power of sort of selecting if there's people that want to participate that really haven't, and sort of moderating that. But I want to kind of just give a proposed framework of our discussion today, and that is I want to give our panelists a chance to sort of introduce who they are, and then maybe in the next round we'll get a little bit of sense of sort of where they're coming from on the topic of acceptance within families, both individual families and ward families. And then I want to kind of, I guess I'd like to focus most of our sort of discussion more kind of on the questions of, where are the sticking points, where are the problems, kind of what issues are we running into in terms of finding the degree of acceptance we'd like to within our both ward and individual families, and maybe some solutions. And I'm sure that some of you will have some ideas about that as well. And so maybe I'll start just with introducing myself. My name's Sam Wolf. I grew up in the church, missionary, BYU, all that kind of stuff. Eventually I was excommunicated, so unlike the rest of our panel, I guess I actually went to church a couple weeks ago, so I don't know what it means to be active once in a while ago. But I'm officially sort of booted out and silenced from the church. And pretty much that happened after I took a stand. I came out sort of in a public way in my congregation in Washington, D.C. back in the time, and so that made the leadership very uncomfortable. The church membership were all, yeah, of course, you're part of the family, we love you. Thanks so much for what you said, but some of the leadership had a different idea. So they kind of shut me down. So, but anyway, I'd like to just maybe for a beginning round, just give a chance, maybe just down the line, just to give a brief introduction, and we can sort of deepen the conversation as we go along. Go ahead, David.
I'm David Baker, and as you can see, I am thirsty to no end. I am sort of like Sam. I've come out in my ward as well, but I'm still active in my ward. I haven't yet encountered leadership who has tried to excommunicate me. We'll see. I'm moving in a week to Michigan, so we'll see how that congregation takes it. It's different than DC or San Francisco. I have come out to my entire family, come out in a big way, a couple ways, and met some resistance on some ends family, met some great acceptance on other sides, and within wards, it's been generally along age lines is where I've been accepted or not. So I'm the, besides Sam here, I'm the only gay one on the panel, but I think we're going to do a good job. Brad?
Yeah. I'm Brad Carmack. I just flew from Salt Lake yesterday. I've spent the last 7 years going to BYU and Provo, just moved up to Salt Lake. I guess my tie-in, I wrote a book while I was at BYU last year, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more tonight. But glad to be a part of the panel. It's kind of a unique perspective since I'm not gay, nobody in my family is, so I might kind of be taking an approach talking about acceptance at the ward family level. But glad to be here.
Well, I'm John Bain. I'm not here by choice. I'm here by actually being dragged by my son here. Actually, I'm married. My wife's sitting out there. My son is also out here, so disregard anything that they rebut when what I say on the panel. I've spent a number of years in the LDS Church. I am a convert. I'm not a life member. I'm also not a Utah Mormon. There is a difference. I happen to be a New England Mormon, and they tend to rock the boat. I've held many positions in the church. I was a branch president. I was a bishop. I guess I still am a bishop. They tell me you never lose the calling. Just not a sitting bishop, as they would say. I'm a member of my high priest group right now, out in Utah, the wonderful world of Utah. Though no, this is not a Utah accent. It's a New England accent. So, my whole issue of family acceptance has been a journey. It really has, and we'll talk more about that. I think it's a journey for my son, and it's been a journey for me and I'm not sure who's more deeply into the journey. So it'll be interesting, but it's good to be here.
Okay, thanks for those introductions. So, being a lawyer, I'm interested in words, and what are we talking about when we say acceptance? And so I could just open that up for anybody to jump into, and even if other people would like to sort of, kind of get involved, even at this early stage. But what are we talking about in acceptance within families? I may want to take that one on. I think Brad wants to.
Yeah. So I was just at the, I don't know if, I can't see everybody in the back, so I'll stand a little bit, that's right. But I was at the P-Flag chapter in Salt Lake just last week, and our subject was acceptance, and which I thought was just really fitting. We've had some good preparations for this panel as well, but that was an additional help. But I think that I kind of see acceptance on two levels. Have any of you in here ever read Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute, or Anatomy of Peace? Okay, it's just kind of this idea of that we have a way of viewing people that's sort of independent of the way that we treat them, right? So like, let's say you go and you need a phone number from a secretary, right? So you can just like ask the person for the number, and you can be just using that receptionist, that secretary, like they were a computer, like give me the number to this person, and almost treating them as an object to give you the number. Or you can, when you ask them for the number, you can use the same words in the same tone, but realize and acknowledge the personhood of that secretary, to realize that this person got up in the morning, they have hopes, dreams, fears, insecurities just like you do, and realize that they're a human being. And that's really the level that we have equality with each other, is the level of the human being. And so leadership and self-deception is very much about acknowledging the humanity of others and realizing that most of the time we're in the box, as it were. We see other people as means to an end, or irrelevant, or as obstacles to what we want. So I think that acceptance has a lot to do with how we view and perceive others, as we see them as equals, as other humans. So I think that's one level of acceptance. The second, and I think it's kind of relevant to this panel, is the acceptance of relationships. Because we can take a look and see, for instance, pair relationships, are they something other, or are they something equal? Are they an object, or are they something that we know and relate to and are familiar with? There's a great article by Bob Burt. He's a Yale scholar. He was talking about same-sex marriage, and it's a sort of a legal and social argument. But he said that the part of slavery that was most egregious and terrible is not so much the forced labor. They had lots of forced labor in the Northeast. The capitalist system is sometimes more compulsory than slavery was, but it was the aspect of the unequality of the relationships. That the relationships between slaves weren't recognized. They could break up families and send them anywhere. And that was really the offensive part of slavery, was the lack of recognition of the relationships. And so I think that's the second level of acceptance that's important, is the equalizing of relationships. And I see that as between same-sex couples being most relevant.
All right, thanks. That was really good. Maybe one chance for any reaction to that, or anybody else that wants to answer the same question, but I thought that was really kind of a good way to sort of set the tone of what we're talking about here.
What was the first book you asked us about? Had anyone read?
Oh, Leadership and Self-Deception.
I got that.
By the Arbinger Institute. They also wrote Anatomy of Peace.
Anatomy of Peace.
What? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a comment sort of building on what Brad said. I had an interesting conversation with my mother a couple nights ago, and she said, when a person knows another person and they have a good rapport and a good relationship, and then they find out that that person is gay and they shun them, it's not the person that they're shunning, it's their idea of what gay is and their, level of discomfort with that. And I like what you said about, looking at the person and the relation, as opposed to, now they're gay, they become an object of something that I don't understand, I don't want anything to do with.
Okay. And kind of where we're at least in my sort of framework here, is just kind of getting a sense of sort of where you guys are at, in particular, kind of with on the topic of acceptance. And maybe kind of within that, like what signs are you seeing that we're making progress towards greater acceptance within our families? Anyone?
I'll take that one, Sean. So I've sort of run the gamut with acceptance within my own family and as well with friends. Every time I've come out to someone, because we all know it's not just coming out once, you've got to continually do it. when I came out to my dad, it was sort of just like, okay, this is who my son is now. Sort of jokingly said, half jokingly, half serious, if I thought it would help David, I'd hire a hooker. Which was not the most accepting thing, but it was an attempt to sort of bridge the situation, because it's not recognizing the whole extent of the problem. It's sort of looking at that as that object, as that something else, not quite human. And then when I came out to my mother, it was very silent for about 45 minutes of just silence. That was sort of difficult to deal with, and over time, both of those relationships have changed. My dad no longer recommends that I find a nice woman to pay, and my mother has become very, very much more open, and she's getting there. And not to have me pay for a woman, mind you. But that relationship has been well with my parents, and they have a direct bloodline love for me that's happened throughout the whole life. But it's been interesting to see what's happened with my siblings. My oldest brother has my oldest brother's wife, her brother is gay. So my brother-in-law once removed. That brother has sort of had to deal with it before I came out. So he's sort of more open and accepting of me as a person, but not the idea of homosexuality. Not at all, but he's getting there. My sister and her husband, on the other hand, view the thought of me finding a husband, the thought of me adopting children, as how dare you, as sort of just how dare you influence someone else's life like that. And my sister has essentially at one point told me that I should be going to hell for even thinking about that. And so it's very much run the gamut. I've had a good friend who I actually was helping support him on his mission. He wrote to me and told me that I was possessed by Satan. And so it's sort of, I've seen sort of the gamut of acceptance, from open and accepting my stepmom is fantastic, to I am the spawn of Satan, I'm possessed. And it's been difficult to see that happen. But the more and more exposure they've had to me, the more and more time they've had to know me. My friend who told me I was possessed by Satan, we now talk probably a couple times a month, and we're good friends. Like, it's great. He no longer believes that I'm possessed, and in fact, first thing he did when he got home, he's just like, so I want to say how much of an idiot I was. I'm just like, yeah, just a little bit. And so it's been difficult, but I think what's helped build that acceptance is that when I was told I was possessed by the devil, or when I was told I'm going to hell, I didn't react negatively. Instead, I just said, okay, here I am. I'll still be here tomorrow. I didn't run away. I didn't fight it. I didn't yell and get into a fight with them. I continued to day by day just be there and be the same person that they knew all along. And I think that slowly worked away at the objectivity part of it. Go ahead.
What do you think gave you the strength to be able to stay in there, listening to those kinds of hurtful comments and so on? Did you have a network of friends or others that you felt were giving you support so that you could stay strong?
Somewhat there's a network of friends, and somewhat I just had a sort of just a phase shift in my way of thinking, that I'm the only one that can take offense at what someone says to me. So if I look at what they're saying and where they're coming from, knowing that 2 years earlier I was in that same spot and I was likely to be the person saying that, it sort of gave me the strength to be more openly forgiving, more just, okay, I don't like it, but I'm not going to take personal affront to it and make the situation worse. I sort of became more of a realist in that in order to make the situation better, I've got to just sort of keep going on day by day, and it will get better. And I've seen it happen, especially with my ward. When I came out to my ward in DC, the singles ward there, There was a fireside talk that I spoke at and told everyone I planned to find a husband, and there were some gasps in there, and but everyone else like took it well, and there were 30, 40 people from my ward there, so next week everyone in the ward knew. Gotta love that rumor mill. But it was interesting to see how there was an immediate change in the word of how people, at least to my face, no longer like would bring up Prop 8 or talk about things. And then slowly over time, as they got more comfortable with the fact that I was who I was gay, I was open, I was active, everything, that they realized, okay, no, we can talk about these things and we can have a dialogue, have a discussion. But their first reaction was to, oh, I can't say anything. Like, I don't want to offend him, which was a different one, but it was sort of just like, okay, I just need to keep moving along day by day by day. And as I've done that, as I've seen how it's been reinforced, it's given me more strength to just continue that.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I wonder if that's what you say that toward the end is one of the things that's holding the church back a little bit. Because Mormons are so appropriate all the time and we don't want to offend. And part of us, like the fact that they wouldn't bring up what they really were feeling probably about Prop 8. I mean, it's exhausting to have to go through the process of I'm not really possessed, for every person that thinks you are, but at the same time, every time that happens, the person learns something more about the truth of the situation. And I wonder if part of our fatigue, if you will, in the church is what keeps us from being able to move it forward in discussion because because everyone's just being so appropriate,
Yeah, and I think that's probably right on the mark, because while we say, or while leaders say that the church isn't a resort, it's a hospital for sinners, we don't really believe that culturally. I mean, when you go to church, you put on your best face, and you're the mannequin in the window.
Yeah, right.
And it's I don't know, I think it's very, very damaging to just continue with that, and so I don't think that's a problem unique to homosexuality. I think it's definitely an endemic issue within the church, and so for that you just need to either have a collection of people who will bring things up, like our friend Carl, or have things where you're the one who just brings things up and just speaks and just being like, actually, no, that's not what this says, or that's not what these scriptures say, or how about this? How does this affect everyone else? You're talking about marriage. What about people who are going to be single for the rest of their life? What about the gays? And just see the reaction instantly there, where it then builds a dialogue, it builds a conversation where there wouldn't really have been one.
And just real quick, can I follow?
Yeah.
I think also part of my thought is to say not so much that we should be rebel rousers, mainly because maybe some of us feel that's a good route to take, but I think in the church Mormons generally tend to resist that. But I think more what I'm thinking it would be a more effective approach would be to say something like, hey everyone, I'm gay, and it's really important to me that you don't start censoring everything that you say. I'd like you to actually ask me these questions, and maybe we could, if you'd like, instead, because in my view, the opposite of that seems to promote something that I think is very unhealthy in the church, which is just this, this very Victorian sort of propriety all the time that keeps us from really getting to the heart of the real issues.
John, I saw you wanting to get into this conversation. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Did I? It's interesting. I'm listening very interested. In fact, I mentioned to him, I have a problem in my high priest group because somebody will make a comment, and I'll be squirming because I want to say something, and I sit to say, is this the right time? Is this the right vehicle? And it's difficult because I'm part of the high priest group leadership. So do I really want to open Pandora's box, or do I, and if I do, will I then mitigate my effectiveness of working with people? So it's a fine line that we walk, and I think some people are afraid that they're going to lose out, and by losing out, lose any chance of reaching out. whereas others feel they wanna take the opportunity.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning. Are you out in your ward? I don't know if you.
No, I'm not gay, actually.
Oh, okay. Then you are out.
But my ward is it's interesting because they know that my bishop and my stake president both know that I'm here. Because I said, I want you to know, I don't know where Hugo is gonna have my picture or a statement. I said, when you get the call from Salt Lake, from a general authority saying, did you know your member was, so I'm not sure, but I do need to let them know. One of the statements that I wanted to say is, sometimes as I've thought about my trip, and Josh is coming out, I had to figure out, why am I here? What am I gonna say? Because I had to really go introspective. I've done things just naturally. And in my reaction to Josh, it was a natural reaction. I didn't say, okay, how do I wanna pose this? What do I wanna think? And I just kinda did it, how I felt. And sometimes it was wrong, sometimes it was right. But as I've looked back at it, I said it has nothing to do with being gay. It has to do with what I call life scripts. You've got a life script for me. When you sat there, came here, in your mind's eye, you already know what you think I'm gonna say, or how I'm gonna act. And I think we have that for every single person we know. We have a life script for them. And the minute they don't follow that, we're, why aren't you following my life script? Didn't you get that, And I think that's where the problem comes. My first life script, I don't know if my first one was, but I can remember when my son decided not to become a great musician, like I wanted him to be, like I wanted to be. He's not following my life script. Josh, I've taught you better than that. And I think we have this issue with each other. It has nothing to do about gay or anything else. It has to do with, we're not following I'm not doing what you expect me to do. Or you're not doing what I'm expecting you to do. And suddenly we step back and say, what's wrong with you?
Does anyone have that experience? Sean was mentioning you're in church, you're in this situation with your family, and you have that feeling of wanting to sort of, okay, I need to say something here, and you have, and what was your experience in that? In the back first.
I'm gay and I go to high priest group, and I'm a teacher of the high priest group. Now I'm on that council. It took 2 times in high priests to call down people that said stupid things about gays to get them to stop and think. Twice was all it took to change the behavior. And the current teacher of my high priest group is also gay.
Wow. I'm going to that ward.
Where's your ward at?
Rochester, New York.
Okay. Yes?
I'm not gay, but I'm supporting my son, and I have that squirming experience almost continually. My heart starts to beat, and it can be over anything. It can be over, like last Sunday there was they were talking about, if priesthood is bad, Relief Society is 10 times, 100 times worse, right? And what you're supposed to say and what you're not supposed to say. And so I'm seeing my heart starting to beat because they're talking about how it's, the man-woman thing and Adam and Eve and all that is, how it's okay for, I feel okay because I don't feel threatened by men, and so I don't get, in other words, they're trying to make themselves, these women, that they're not bothered by, feminist issues because they're so perfect, basically. And so I raise my hand after my heart's beating and I'm starting to sweat, and I say, I know what all the right answers are to this and what more, what everyone's expecting everyone else to say and what I'm supposed to say here, but my real feelings are that this is a struggle for a lot of women. A lot of women don't like going into the temple, for instance, and that might bother that. I didn't say temple, I don't know, because that would open another can of worms, but you know what I mean? They have a problem with that Adam and Eve story and where we're supposed to fit into the whole thing. And I said, doesn't matter really what's supposed to be, what actually happens is, I mean, I don't care if men are supposed to be righteously leading, to have a leader in front of you and to say that this is your life script, you know, bothers me, and anyway, I said it in such a way that I was like, okay, I said it, but I had to sit there and weigh it, like, forever. Is this gonna make my point, or am I just gonna be someone who's obnoxious, and they'll tune me out, you know? And so, I don't wanna be that, cause I do wanna have a voice in what I say, and when I do finally say something about the gay situation, which I'm on the brink of doing, because I know there are a lot of other women in the ward who have gay sons, and they're suffering horribly, because they feel like everything's wrong about them and their family. This has to stop. And anyway, so I'm mulling over all this. One of the reasons I'm here.
Thank you.
Share ideas.
I spoke to my 90-year-old mom. She has good hearing. She still swims, drives, sings in the choir. And we talked about scripting, and I tried to tell her that I never felt that I had a home because her script really didn't include who I really was. And she was totally disoriented by the whole discussion, even though I had come out to her last year. She just put her foot down and said, well, I've always loved you. I said, well, but Mom, would you acknowledge me in front of your friends, your peers? She says, I'll have to think about that. So this acceptance issue has a great deal to do with scripting and the ownership we have of our script, because we give up part of our own identity when we change our script for someone else. We have to become more pliant, perhaps less accepting as the acceptor, and we put ourselves at risk. I speak as a father as well. So it's like the Philip eunuch issue.
Yes.
I think with the acceptance, there are different stages, and I like to think of 3 levels. You know, at the base there's tolerance. Okay, I will put up with you, and then there is acceptance, and then there is embracing. And I think that a lot of our families go through the different stages. The tolerance, I now have a gay father, brother, uncle. Then the acceptance of, and it's just fine. He lives his life, I live mine. And then it's a really great thing because I see all these aspects to him that make him, someone special to me. So I think there's those 3 different levels, and people move through those. I know in our own family, we have 5 kids. 4 of them are married. Our kids are not the problem, they're spouses. The one who has essentially left the church mostly because of because he supports our relationship, and he can't believe that the organization that he belongs to would treat gays so badly. And that was his kind of his exit point out of the church. He's no longer active. And then we have one who is somewhat supportive, and one who is, barely tolerant. So
I want to say thank you. I want to say one thing, and then bring it to Brad for a second. Once in a while, I feel really compelled just to go to church. And I remember one experience when I was in New York City in the student ward, and the bishop came in. It was a combined sort of lesson, and he was talking about just unity in the ward. And so he did this chalkboard thing where things that sort of what divides us into categories. So it's like a perfect opportunity. So of course I raise my hand, I say, gay and lesbian Mormons. And so we put it on the chalkboard, and he proceeded to have this wonderful conversation about diversity in the church, and we know we need to be one. If we're not one, you're not. It's with gay on the chalkboard. And so I think that sometimes we don't show up, and if we don't sort of raise our hand and say this, then it's not part of the conversation. And here I was in having the bishop talk about diversity with gay on the chalkboard. So it's wonderful, and I think this can happen when we're kind of part of the conversation. And we are talking about individual families and ward families kind of at the same time, which is okay. And I wanted to kind of bring it back to...
Sam, are you going to take my comment?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
In answer to the question about, when do you speak, I think what Linda said kind of opens a little bit to what I was going to say, which is, not just saying what's expected, I mean, really say what's in your heart, and, you know, ask the questions so that people can start, you know, you teach them to do their own thinking. A couple of things, I think I was in that, I think we have
Were
to
you
talk,
there?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
But anyway, when I was in some Relief Society homemaking thing when I first moved to California, we got to, you know, the world is a terrible state, oh yes, and then of course it's the gays, right? And people are making different comments, and one comment was made was, well, maybe that's their cross to bear, everybody has something that's difficult, you know? And I didn't out myself at that point, but I raised my hand and I said, what if it's not being gay that is their cross to bear, but how we treat them?
Bravo.
Yeah. At which point, the woman in charge of the lesson said, I'm uncomfortable with where this is going, and handed it back to Relief Society. But there were 4 or 5 women that came up to me afterward and thanked me for making the comment, and it opened a dialogue. You know, so you just, you know, you don't know. And in New York City, they were doing the lessons on Proclamation on the Family, and my partner and I happened to be visiting that day in California, and you know, people were saying different things, and then you make a comment and they put it in the cans that's supposed to fit in, right? And I'm like, no, actually that wasn't what I was saying, you know. And you have to, like, you know, you have to take them out of the thing, you know. And I'm like, you know, so you know, and I said, no, what I was saying is that you have to look at the Proclamation on the Family as an inclusive rather than exclusive document. Yeah, my bishop in New York and I went over that with a fine-tooth comb. He says, there's nothing in here that says you can't have a relationship with a woman.
Oh.
He says, yes, marriage is between a man and a woman, but it can also be between a man and a man, and between a woman and a woman. It doesn't say that, you know. So, I mean, I just think, you know, like, using our own thinking and teaching other people to do the same and asking the questions is very powerful. And I want to tell you what President Hinckley said, and you were probably there, when he came to New York City. He said, you have a very diverse, you have a lot of diversity in your state, and you need to love and accept everyone.
A lot of great comments, so thanks for being persistent, and I also appreciate just the level of participation. This is really great. Yes.
Thank you, Judy. You just added a 4th to Joe's list.
Yeah.
Avoidance.
Yes.
Brad, I wanted to talk, because you're sort of, it sounds like you've had sort of this process of from one point to where you're at now. Can you just talk about that a little bit, and what it's been like just to be a straight person, sort of advocating for LGBT people?
I mean, a couple years ago, I was on the phones calling Protect Marriage Maine to oppose same-sex marriage, and it's like radical same-sex marriage and Mormonism and out of it advocate. So I done a 180. I think that usually when people shift, it's because they know somebody that's gay, or they know a gay couple. It's a more common route. Mine was a little bit less common. For me, it was the science. I looked at the science of sexual orientation. I didn't really have an awareness about.
They just turned the air up higher. Can you talk a little louder?
By the way, do you know the Carmacks in Rochester?
Yes.
That's my uncle Richard.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you related to Elder Carmack?
Yeah, he's my great uncle. I'll move out a little bit so I can hear it, yes. But definitely education and understanding, I think, is a big part of that puzzle of acceptance, and that's what turned me around, was to start to know the stories. If you know people, of course, that's the most direct, compelling, persuasive route. But for me, reading the stories, I read No More Goodbyes by Carolyn Pearson. And I mean, wow. Talk about the heartbreakers, you know? Like, you read these stories, you're like, this is totally unnecessary. You talked about being gay isn't necessarily a cross, but the reaction of people to it can be burdensome. And I kind of got that from No More Goodbyes. I'm like, this is an unnecessary burden. Like, we could eliminate this just by changing minds. And so I think that, again, the exposure to people that are gay, and then understanding, for me, was the science, but understanding the issues, I think, is the key element there.
And what's it been like for you? Just, I mean, what kind of reaction have you been getting within your ward family of sort of having made this transition?
Yeah, so I wrote this book, right, and I was pretty open about sharing drafts of it. So I even emailed them to my bishop when I was writing. I just made a decision early on that I wasn't going to be in the closet with my advocacy or my exploring. I mean, I'm on a journey. I haven't really arrived, right? So I'm still learning, still growing and evolving my views. In fact, same-sex marriage, it wasn't until about 8 months ago I finally kind of tipped the scales. So I used to be anti-same-sex marriage, and I was kind of unsure, and now I'm like pro, and now I'm like very pro same-sex marriage. And in fact, I gave a presentation in Sunstone last month on why Mormonism can buy gay marriage. Some of the arguments that we've made here I made on a YouTube by that same name. What was the question again?
Yeah, just what kind of reaction you've been getting
from the
folks.
Ward family. So my parents pulled me aside, and my personal family sort of had some mixed results, responses to my, they pulled me into the bedroom, like, what did we do wrong as parents? Kind of. It wasn't that bad. My father was, he read the book, he's very complimentary about my research and thoughtfulness, and encouraged me to keep on writing and researching and stuff. So there's some praise there as well. My ward family, my bishop pulled me aside because I had sent him a draft as well. He was concerned. Ultimately, he talked about a possible church court, but nothing happened there. But he ended up giving me some suggestions on how to improve the first chapter, which I appreciated. This was nice. A couple of comments. My roommate was kind of reporting on me to the bishop, but nothing really happened there. And Facebook is the place where I got the most extremes on both sides. Some people were very happy about what I was doing, and if Jim and others have thanked me for what I've done, so I've got some affirmation on one side, harsh criticism on the other, a lot of apathy in the middle. So the responses have kind of been a bell curve, I suppose you'd say. But it has been a journey for me to both build acceptance for the view of straight, active Mormons, and really caring and affirming homosexual relationships, as well as building acceptance for of myself, to getting out of the box in regards to gay people and gay relationships.
So I think we've done a pretty good job of sort of getting a sense of where folks are at and defining our terms and whatnot. And I think the meat of the discussion, and we're sort of there to some extent already, is kind of the so what of all of this. And I think that is a sort of, what are the challenges and how do we work past those? Just looking with an eye towards progress. And we're sort of there, but I think that, and I have a whole bunch of questions sort of along those lines, but I also we can just sort of make it interactive. If you have particular questions, particular people on the panel, feel free to do that, or also if you'd like to sort of raise challenges that you've had in sort of your journey of, trying to find acceptance, and we can just sort of, talk about ways past those challenges or successes, just kind of open up in that kind of I guess, action sort of area of the discussion. Yes?
Has there been a shift in the Southern Poverty Leadership Center's approach to LGBT issues? I know initially I never saw much about it, and now they're much more visible, active in legalistic responses.
Yeah, just really briefly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight in a case that I'm working on. But yeah, they have started a new LGBT rights project, and they asked me to come help start that about a year ago. So it's been a wonderful kind of experience. But I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. But thank you for the question. Did you have your hand up?
I was actually more responding also to David, what he said earlier. I find it refreshing that the younger generation is more, you guys are more, okay, I just told everybody in my ward, or I told at a certain group, and I knew in a week later everybody would know it anyway. I'm not a member of your church, but the way we approached it is we tried to get, and maybe that's a good, I don't want to say lesson, but a roadmap for if you are moving to an area that might not be as progressive and forward-thinking and liberal as your current ward is. But a lot of times when you let people know you first, before they know you're gay or before they know you're in a relationship with a man or a woman, it helps them see you first. In my partner's example, he's still active as much as he can be, but we also, a lot of people in this ward know me. Well, I'm officially his roommate or friend, but nobody believes that after 3 years. And they still, they come to our house and we show them our honeybees and use that as our vehicle to, break down the barrier, get them to know us, to talk with us, interact with us. Some people are visibly uncomfortable, but it's a more subtle way maybe. Maybe it's a more sneaky way, I don't know. But we're getting under the radar, basically. We found this gap in the wall that they might build up, because they all know what gay people look like and how they act and what they do and what they're out to do. And here we are. we're not different from them. You know, I mean, I help them clean the church once a year, basically. So that might be another strategy. I admire you for your courage to come out, and it's great. And I'm glad that the reaction you received has been so positive. Unfortunately, the reality is it might not be like that.
Yeah, that's not always the case.
Yeah. So just be aware of that.
Thank you. Josh?
One thing that I think in my experience to stress is patience. We talk about the journey of those who are coming out, the gay and lesbian, the sons and daughters, but the parents and friends are just as equally. They are in a way, they are going through their own coming out process. It's just as painful as it is for the child. It's just as disorienting. They're dealing with everything they've known and believed, and suddenly it's gone out the window, and they have to rethink things. It took me 10 so years to accept myself. That was me going through it. Can I not give that same amount of time for my parents to get, if not at least that amount of time to become comfortable with it?
And how have you or others helped your parents in that process?
I've actually had a lot of conversations with my mom over the years, and I think just been really keeping a dialogue open has been really helpful. Listening to her concerns and having a real conversation about it. Not going back and forth with the canned answers. Back again, just really getting to, just really communicating. And she actually is kind of sorry that she's not here today. And that's progress for her. That's progress. So just keeping the dialogue open.
Yes.
I think just looking people in the eyes and being genuine gives them the permission to be genuine as well, which we've talked about already is something really relieving for a Latter-day Saint. And that's what I've found. That's been the paradigm shift for me from going from victimhood to service, which is also something that's important to a Latter-day Saint, is the opportunity to provide a space for people to be themselves as well.
And my back's a little bit turned to you guys sometimes, but feel free to just kind of speak up if you want to jump in as well.
I'll throw something at you.
Good. Okay. Let's see, somebody that hasn't talked yet. Yes, in the back.
I don't know if I dare come out my ward in St. Louis, Utah, because most of the people are 80 years old, and if I did, they'd probably have a heart attack. These little cats, an airplane, like an airplane from the oxygen mask come down. It's a wonderful older ward. A lot of temple workers. Chris and I have been together 19 years, and we live about 2 blocks from St. George Temple. A lot of people in my ward are temple workers or snowbirds from northern Utah that comes to southern Utah, and that's where they reside for the winter. And I don't know if I would dare come out in the warden. I just choose not to. I just go and take the best and hang the rest. I don't worry about making a big deal, but when I do, we have some rather Rush Limbaugh conservative Mormon think going on in our ward, and I will take a stand when it comes up, and I won't sit back and let something be said that it's not socially just. Being a social worker also, I couldn't stand to do that. It's just not my genre of thought. But it's interesting. I just received my invitation to Evergreen.
Okay.
and this year it's free.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to go to Evergreen, it's free this year. And
is he inviting us?
Downtown is free.
Okay, well, thanks for that plug. By the way, I'll give another plug a little bit later. This is definitely off the record, but the Southern Poverty Law Center is starting to investigate the reparative